Welcome back to Sailing El Jaleo. This week, after spending a couple of days in Prince Creek, we hop back on the ICW and continue our way south through the rest of the Waccamaw River. We pass Georgetown and Winyah Bay, and we rejoin the ICW back out on the coast of Carolina. From there, we make our way to Charleston, where we hunker down for a couple of days waiting out bad weather, and we navigate a couple of tricky spots, some shallow and also some high current areas. So I guess we might as well go ahead and get right into it. Grab a drink, climb aboard, and let's get going. We ended up staying in Prince Creek for 4 days. The first couple of days were really nice. It was warm, it was sunny, it was beautiful out, and we wanted to get a bunch of laundry done. We were going to be stopping at the Wacca Wache Marina, which was only 4 miles away, and we're going to stop there on our way out, and I wanted to use up as much of water as we could before we got there so we could refill all of our water tanks. So we got 100% of the laundry done, which was great. We had no dirty laundry in the boat, which was a nice treat, and it was a beautiful opportunity to just kind of kick back and relax. We got some grilling done. We grilled a small slab of pork belly, which seems to be a... Hi, Weeks. Do you mind if I get this done, Princess? Yeah, I've been trying all morning, but you keep interrupting. Yeah, okay, come on up. Come on. Come on, Weeks, so I can get this done. Okay. Yeah, you relax now. Sorry about that. I've been trying all morning to do this recording. I think I'm just going to have to go with this because she's being a pest. Right now we're... Hi, Hoob. Yes, you relax too. Right now we're by Jekyll Island in Georgia, and we've got some 40-mile-an-hour winds, and we're getting tossed around a little bit, so the puppies are a little on edge. So we'll try and get through this. But anyway, so we got some grilling done, and then we had 2 days where the wind was high and it was raining. So we spent a total of 4 days there, and then we got back on the road with our next stop was going to be at the Wacca Wache Marina so we could refuel and refill water. We arrived at Wacca Wache Marina at exactly 8 o'clock. That's right when they open. So we went in and we got our fuel and water. I did take on about 70 gallons of diesel, and this is our first stop since we last refueled in Bainbridge or Chesapeake, Virginia. So we had made it quite a ways through all of North Carolina and a good chunk of South Carolina. So our range is pretty decent. We can motor for around 100 hours on what we've got, which is really great. And the water, we had used up almost all of our water doing laundry and stuff, and it takes about an hour to refill all of the oil and water tanks. I do have 2 water tanks up front. I believe they're 35 gallons each. They're fiberglass water tanks, and those are underneath the bed in the V-bunk. So I filled both of those up. I've got 6 6-gallon jerry cans underneath the dog's bunk, and that's what I use for drinking. I like to have my drinking water separate. And then I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I've got 7 more 6-gallon jerry cans up on the deck, and I use that for water for the dogs and also for doing laundry, and that's all of my shower water as well. So we refilled on water, and also we unloaded our trash. Along the Intracoastal Waterway, we don't put the motor on Frank. We don't put beans back on Frank, just because a lot of times there's not anywhere to go where we anchor to go onto land, and there's really nothing to see there anyway. And the dogs are used to going on deck doing their business, so it's not a problem for them. I know some dogs have a real issue with that, but all of these guys are very used to it. So once we get to Florida, we'll put the motor back on Frank, and then we'll be going to land every day. But for these months while we're, roughly 2 months while we're traveling, Frank is basically just a glorified garbage barge. Since we don't get to stop that often, we just use Frank for all of our garbage. We double bag it so it doesn't get, when it rains, no water can get into it. It doesn't become a sloppy mess, so it stays nice and clean. And we got rid of 3 bags of trash there, so it was great. And This was really only our second stop. I don't really count staying at Blackbeard's Cove as a stop. You know, I wanted to test all of the systems in the boat on this trip before leaving the country as kind of a robustness, or test the robustness of all the electrics and everything that I've installed. And I wanted to do a good 9 months, you know, quote unquote off-grid. And what I mean by off-grid is, yes, we'll stop for diesel and water. The water is kind of arbitrary. I do have a water maker that I could fire up at any time and start making my own water. But once you do that, you have to run it every 4 days, and I just don't use that much water to make that make sense. There is a new silver ion technology add-on you can get for the Spectra water makers, which is what I've got. So I'm looking at that, and that will allow you to go up to a month in between using the water maker. So if we can do that, that would make a lot more sense for us because we just don't use it that often. And that add-on is, I believe, around $1,300. So I have to do a lot more research on that before I consider spending that money. But anyway, so I wanted to do this 9 months off-grid, and what I mean by that is I can take on diesel, I can take on water, and I can bring, you know, I can get fresh veggies and stuff. If I can walk to the grocery store, then I consider that fair game. Basically, what I didn't want to do is I didn't want to hook up to any external electricity supply. I wanted to test the entire robustness of our system, the solar, the wind, and the alternator to provide 100% of our energy. And you know, we switched all of our cooking and our refrigeration away from propane. The fridge or freezer, it was actually a fridge. The fridge that came with El Jaleo actually ran on a compressor off of the diesel motor. So the fridge would only run when the diesel motor was running, which is, you know, in the stuff, it's extremely well insulated. The cooler, I've still got it, it's still there, but I don't use it for that. I use it for my pistachio storage. But anyway, so they could go days in between running the compressor and all of the food would stay cold. But now I've got 2 electric freezers and an electric fridge. And I switched all of the cooking to electric as well. I've got 2 induction cooktops and a convection oven. And I wanted to do that because propane can be a real problem to find. I see other sailing channels searching for propane in foreign countries with all the different fittings and all the different regulations as far as bottles are concerned. It becomes like a 2 or 3 day nightmare every time they need to find propane. And I just didn't want to deal with that. So that's why we got the big ass solar panels. That's why we got the wind generator and the new robust DC to DC converters for the alternators, just to make everything work in harmony and have the electric system supply 100% of our needs with no external support. So that's basically the biggest part of the system that I wanted to test. And also the food preparation and planning, I kind of wanted to test that too. Yes, I'll go to the store to get fresh cheese, fresh veggies, that kind of stuff, but I don't want to bring on anything besides what we've already got. So this going off grid is kind of testing for long trips. You know, it'll take us, when we do cross an ocean, it'll take us a month to do that, and that's a very small amount of time compared to the 9 months that we're hoping to go. But we don't know what kind of provisioning we're going to be able to do in foreign countries, especially for the dogs. Am I going to be able to find dog food in foreign countries? I assume yes, but I don't know. So if we have a good 9 months to a year's worth of supply of food on the boat, then I feel real comfortable about, you know, going anywhere or doing anything. So this is our kind of our final, it's a very long, year-long shakedown test of this boat that I've, you know, Frank built a boat and I've changed it radically with all of the new technology that I've put in, but I just want to make sure all of this stuff works flawlessly before we even entertain going somewhere where we're not going to be able to get spare parts for any of it. So yep, that's kind of the plan, and it's going very well so far. You know, we've stopped for diesel twice now, once in Great Bridge at Atlantic Yacht Basin, once at the Wacca Wache Marina, and now where I'm at currently, we're right close to the Florida-Georgia border, and I'm actually anchored right across from the Jekyll Island Marina, so I'm going to stop there to get fuel and water before we enter Florida. And yeah, we'll go from there. So everything's going well so far, and fingers crossed it keeps going that way for the next 6 or 7 months. After continuing down the Intracoastal Waterway, we pulled up just short of Charleston, so we anchored just north of Charleston in Dewees Creek. And it was kind of odd. As soon as we got there, I had just dropped the anchor and set our anchor alarm. And I went down below to start putting stuff away, and I heard the dogs upstairs barking, so I'm like, what's going on? So I ran up there, and there were these guys in probably a 25 or 30 foot long type speedboat type thing. And there were like 7 dudes all in like law enforcement vests and stuff, and I'm like, oh crap, what's going on? So as soon as I got here, they asked for my boating paperwork. You know, you do need, I don't have a title for the boat. It's not titled, but you do have to register. So El Jaleo is federally registered, not state registered. So I did give them the federal paperwork, and they were fine, but it was just weird. I don't know why you'd have 7 guys going around checking people's paperwork. It seemed really weird. I don't know what it was about, but they checked my paperwork. It was awkward. I didn't really say much because, they're law enforcement. You don't talk to those people voluntarily. So that's my stance anyway, just from a legal standpoint. And that's not legal advice. I'm just saying. Anyway. So they went on their way, and then we stayed for a couple of days in Dewees Creek, and everything was fine. And we were coming up on a stretch here going into Charleston where there are a couple of unique challenges. So if you're southbound coming into Charleston, or if you're northbound going out of Charleston, there is a stretch just beyond the Ben Sawyer Memorial Bridge that is very shallow. There's a couple of humps in there that are only about 4.5 feet deep at low tide. And if you have been a long time watcher, you'll remember when I was coming through in the spring, we did get there at low tide and we did ground. So we grounded with about 4 other boats. And we just had to wait for the tide to come in and lift us up. So for those days that I was in Dewees Creek, I heard every day of boats grounding in that section. So I knew it was still an issue. And the other consideration is once you cross Charleston Harbor, you do take a cut over to the Stono River, and that cut is called the Elliott Cut, and it has the most wicked currents in the entire ICW. And it's a sustained distance. The current is strong through the entire section. There's a little river that leads up to that cut, and once you get in the Elliott Cut, it's only maybe a quarter of a mile long, but that current is outrageous. If you look on Navionics, it'll only say, there are current charts on Navionics. And if you trust that, don't trust that, because it'll say there's only a 2.5 knot current, but it's actually closer to 4 to 4.5. When I was going through, it said that I was at a 1.5 knot current going with the direction that I was traveling in. And I actually was going 8.5 knots through there, and El Jaleo can't go over 4.3 knots, so that meant it was at least a 4.2 knot current going through there, and it only was quote unquote supposed to be 1.5. So those currents are very underrated, and we had to time it. We had to wait for a window where we could time it right, so we would get at least a mid-tide rising going through that shallow section, make it across Charleston Harbor, and then through the Elliott Cut while the current was traveling in the right direction. The first time I went through the Elliott Cut, I was actually going against the current, and it took me over an hour to do that quarter of a mile stretch. So yeah, it was a nightmare. And it's very narrow. I had boats behind me. They were irritated, to say the least, and I don't blame them. They could have passed me. There's enough room, but they didn't try, and I'm glad they didn't try, because it could have been hairy. But anyway, if you're going through that area, the Elliott Cut, you want to go through when the current is going in your direction of travel. And I mean, if you've got a boat that can do 7 knots, which a lot of sailboats can, I mean, okay, you'll be fine. But if you're in a little bit older, a little bit slower boat, you might want to go through when the current is traveling in your direction. After making our way through the Elliott Cut, we continued up the Stono River for approximately 10 more miles before we stopped for the night in Church Creek. And that's all we have time for this week. If you do like our videos, please like, comment, and subscribe. That doesn't cost you anything, but it helps us out more than you'll ever know. I would like to give a massive shout out to my Patreon crew. Without your guys' support, I wouldn't make these videos. And my Patreon crew is Joan and Juddy Judnick, Val and Chris Alcorn, Denise and Eli Sackett, Sherry Erickson, Deb Shaw, and Matthew Spotton. Thank you guys so very much. Your support means the world to me. I do have one legacy patron member. Her name is Joan Lindbow. Unfortunately, she has passed on, but she lives on in our hearts forever. We really miss you, Joan. If you are interested in joining our Patreon crew, there is a link in the description down below. That'll take you to our Patreon page where you can sign up, and it'll give you access to hundreds of photos and videos, behind the scenes, and real-time updates of stuff that we're, doing and what's going on in real time. And you would help support the channel, which would be awesome. Alrighty, I hope you all are well, and we'll see you next week.